if I think I've hacked the perfect diet, can I just eat the same thing every single day?
That's a short answer, no. If you don't have your health, what do you have?
You are a functional medicine doctor.
Join us as we blend modern and ancient wisdoms to be well now.
Welcome to the Be Well Now podcast. I am Nick, the curious patient.
And I'm Dr. Ron Dummar, chiropractic physician, Chinese medicine doctor, functional medicine doctor, and the owner of Community Health and Wellness here in Heber City. Hello.
In Heber City, Utah. 2 years strong here on the Be Well Now podcast. Hard to imagine. Hey, I've been watching all the YouTubers, okay? The latest guy I'm watching is Brian Johnson. He's going to live forever. Hashtag don't die. And he has this like daily regimen. I'm like, surely there's no diversity in the world. Whatever he does, I'll just do the exact same thing. It'll work perfectly for me,
sure.
right? So I send him all the videos and I'm like, can I just eat this every day? And you're like, hold on. Hold your horses.
Hold your horses, buddy.
Let's do a podcast about this. So whether it's biohacker McGee out there trying to live to 100 with Brian Johnson's advice, or you're eating a bowl of cereal and you're going to your local sandwich shop for lunch and you're having pasta for dinner, whatever like real world stuff's happening, I wanted to ask you about eating similar things every day, whether we think they're healthy or not. That's the truth for a lot of people.
So Brian Johnson, can I just say, make a statement here? Brian Johnson is like the quintessential diet fad that we see that happens recurrently in the United States over and over and over again. And so what I mean by that essentially is that Brian Johnson is, what I think is a wonderful thing that he's doing is the most studied, the most calculated and detailed. So all these tests that they're having performed on him to determine what he should be taking. That's brilliant. We do that in our office. We take tests on individuals to determine what you need for your nutrient profile. I don't think there's any problem with that.
And he's spending $2 million a year. He has his own doctors and teams. Like,
absolutely,
he's going crazy.
There's nothing
with
wrong with what he's doing.
And he's taking over kind of that niche of the YouTube ecosystem in terms of the people who want to dial it all in.
And then he develops what he believes to be significant benefits and measures those benefits. So it's measurable, right? It's not just out in the ether. So it's measurable, which that's also good, that the benefits are measurable. And then the idea is what's being portrayed, and this is where we fall off the wagon a little bit with Brian Johnson, is that we extrapolate all of that to humanity. So those tests, the millions of dollars that have been utilized in order to determine what is best for Brian Johnson and Brian Johnson's environment, given Brian Johnson's ecosystem that he lives in and what he's exposed to and who he interacts with every single day and how much stress level he's dealing with. Those are the nutrients, that's the profile, those are the foods that are going to work best for Brian Johnson. And so if we attempt to extrapolate that to humanity, what's going to happen is the same thing that happens with every other fad diet. It's going to work for some people. It's going to work brilliantly for some people. And then for other people, it's going to be lackluster. Right?
I've been trying.
And then for some, it will cause other symptoms and lead them more down the rabbit hole of disease or illness.
So you live in this world of nutrition and healing people. I'm more of a social media, video marketing. So for me, I want the easy answer, right? For sure. I want something that's easily to package and will resonate. And here's the 5 top supplements that every person should take. I saw that clip yesterday and I'm like, now I know enough to realize that is, even the people who are saying it probably know it's just clickbaity.
Right.
Because it's so complicated and humans are so diverse. Anyway, so I get that our human desire is to latch onto that and just want to believe it. And I felt that way too.
Yeah.
And even his super veggie dish, I'm like, dude, I can't, my stomach hurts. Like I'm feeling quite,
well, your microbiome is
gaseous.
Yeah. Well, your
it's
microbiome,
like all this broccoli, I don't know what's going on.
And your environment is different than his. Your exposures in life in general and the way that your DNA is responding to your environment is unique and different than his. So anyway, we're not machines.
We're not machines. And some of this stuff feels very healthy. But anyway, I kind of wondered about that because even I have a tendency to get in before Brian Johnson. I'm going to eat my eggs in the morning and then I'm going to have this for lunch. And then, because life is so complicated.
Sure.
I mean, so Tell me,
so you're
the gut
wanting, like,
microbiome and diversity.
What do we do? How do we follow a pattern? And the great thing, the attractive thing of Brian Johnson, he's like, hey, I have it down to an exact.
I've measured it.
This is what you do.
Like the data is like God almost to him.
So I understand that, and that's good. But it's also, we have to recognize that that's unique to his biological diversity. There is biological diversity amongst all of us. The variety of bacterial species that we have in our gut, how they react to certain foods, and we can develop, let's put it this way, we can actually develop a microbiome that is, we will develop, not we can, but we will develop a microbiome that is supportive over time of what we feed it.
What is the gut microbiome? Why does it matter?
So your microbiome essentially is it's bacteria, it's viruses, it's some of them we might even consider to be pathogenic factors, right? Especially if they become populated, then it can become a problem in the gut. But we have a variety of different species, bacterial species in the gut that they produce vitamins. They'll secrete as part of their catabolism, their metabolic processes as bacteria. They'll secrete vitamins for our body, like vitamin K2 is produced in your gut, and that helps you clot and produce clotting factors so you don't bleed out. Also, there's gut microbiota that produce neurotransmitters, so like serotonin, norepinephrine. We have all sorts of hormones, acetylcholine. There's lots of neurotransmitters and hormones, vitamins that are produced in the gut. And we know, we've mentioned this on multiple podcasts. We even know now that it's the gut microbiome that stimulates the release of GLP-1, which is a satiation indicator, or when you're full, or when you know that you're full and you don't need to eat anymore, right? So that is what GLP-1 does, but it's stimulated by bacteria in the gut. And so if you're missing that species of gut bacteria, then the likelihood is you're going to be needing or feeling like you need to eat so much more because you're not getting that shut-off signal to the body.
So gut health is linked to digestion, immune function, even mental health. Like the gut-brain connection is a real thing, even though there's a lot about this that feels mysterious.
The vitamins that it produces, neurotransmitters that it produces, all of those things play a significant role in your overall health. Yeah. So in fact, it's been equated recently in research that we've seen with the increased incidence of irritable bowel disease, of type 2 diabetes and obesity. We've seen that correlate with a decreased diversity in microbiome. So as the diversity of our flora, of our bacteria gut culture has gone down, the incidence of bowel disease has gone up.
And that's the thing. I'm like the armchair quarterback because I watch all the YouTubers online talking about all these different subjects, and I'm like, this would be interesting. And you're like, oh yeah, I know a lot about that. Let's do a podcast. So I'm the guy who's like excited about the media side of things, and you live in it every day helping people heal. So you're the real deal. But I hear people talking about the diversity of the microbiome and how that is really linked to more health.
Yes.
And so can we go into that a little bit and sort of, I imagine that means we should eat a lot of plants and a lot of different foods, but how do we get a more diverse microbiome? Why should we care?
Absolutely. So the way to get a more diverse microbiome is to expose yourself to more diverse foods. And also more diverse cultures. So more diverse foods is simply like, okay, I can be consuming different varieties of fruit. I can be consuming different varieties of vegetables, especially. I can be consuming, different types of meat, and especially wild game if you can. You're going to get a more diverse contribution from wild game than you are, say, from a manufactured or a processed meat. The processing of meat becomes a little problematic, and we can talk about that maybe a little bit later. But the real key that you're looking for to replenish and to support, as you asked for, how do I really support or grow a diverse microbiome, is you're looking to include a variety of different foods. Like think about colors. I have 5 fingers on my hand. Can I include 5 different colors, or how many colors am I involving in my meal? You look at your meal, it's like, do I have yellow? Do I have orange? Do I have red? Do I have green? And it's like even including a variety of colors is going to improve the variety of your microbiome.
So doesn't have to be anything fancy. Just try to focus on getting different kinds of vegetables.
Yes. Well, no. Okay. So number 1 is,
because I'm not a fancy cook. So I'm like, how would I do that? I guess I could just chop them up into a salad.
you can chop them up into a salad. You can steam them. It's usually easier for your body to break them down if you've steamed them first, because it starts to initiate some of the natural biodiversity or the flora within the food itself. So every living thing actually has a culture of biotic species that monitors and regulates essentially its health. So when we consume a plant, and we've talked about this like consuming light before, we're consuming light, but we're also consuming bacteria. We're consuming a bacteria flora that has existed in an environment or learned to thrive in an environment based on that bacterial balance. And when we consume it, it's giving us the intelligence and the understanding, the diversity to be able to thrive within that environment.
That's so fascinating.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's actually should be a mind-blowing thing to a lot of people, where you just stand there and you go, this world and life that we live is of an incredible intelligent design.
And yet some of the basics, like getting enough sleep, just totally transform my world in ways that like overthinking can't do, and all these different ice bath or get the different veggie. I just feel like certain things of the paradox of it all is there's certain things that are so simple to do.
Yes.
Like a good night's sleep, and diversity of food is an important one too.
Well, there's an old story told, right, where this gentleman wants to be healed, and this is an ancient story. He wants to be healed from a disease. So he goes to a local healer who's known as like a spiritual leader, and he says to him, "Hey, I want to be healed." And so the spiritual leader doesn't actually meet him face to face. He tells his servant actually to tell him to go bathe in a dirty river. And the dirty river happened to be known for like silt and mud and just always just really, really muddy, right? He said, go bathe in there and do it 7 times. And after you do that, then you'll be healed. And so it's interesting because, it sounds like such a simple thing to go bathe in this river, but, he's thinking about it. He's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he wants me to go bathe in that river. Never. I won't do that. And why didn't he come talk to me? Because I'm an important person and I need to be the one connecting with him. And oftentimes we get in our own way. And I think that's what you're talking about with health. As far as implementing strategies, we try to get so far into the weeds. There's another term. It's called we look beyond the mark. We get so far into the weeds. We think that health cannot be a simple process. It's got to be complicated. And there's got to be a switch, a secret somewhere, and I'm going to turn it on. But it's got to require a significant amount of my effort when all this guy wants me to do is bathe 7 times. So then eventually he was having a discussion with someone in his house, and he said, well, if he had asked you to do something like great or grand or, incredibly sophisticated and significant, would you have done that? And he's like, well, of course. So he said, well, then why don't you try to do this simple thing as well? Anyway, so then the story goes, he finally does the simple thing and he gets healed. And that's nutrition, I feel like, for us. Nutrition is like you can get as deep and dark and down into the woods as you want to try to discover things. But more often than not, the deeper you get, the further you get past the mark that you intended to get to. And the mark that we really need to all be getting to is eating food as closely as possible that just came out of the ground. So or just was picked from a tree. Would
it be possible to say the food doesn't have a list of ingredients? The food is the ingredient?
Exactly.
If you just eat foods that are just what those are?
Yes.
That's
the simplicity of it, right?
Okay.
The simplicity of it is eat food from farm to table.
That's not so simple though.
Well,
in our modern
may not
age.
be so simple for us to implement, right? But it's simple for us to think about. It's a simple thing to be like, okay, how do I minimize the processing steps that this food was required to undergo to get to my table?
So the gut microbiome, I that all makes sense to me. What else could be considered diverse? Would nuts or seeds be considered part of the diversity?
All foods that we consume. Yeah, I mean
Doritos?
flour. Yeah. So Doritos is a product. That's a really good point. So anything that grows naturally, anything that exists naturally in your environment, right? A plant, something that we would generally consider to be food and edible. Those are the things that I want. The number one thing I would recommend that I think is super easy for people to be able to wrap their brain around and get diversity of nutrients and of minerals, of antioxidants and things like that is to use sprouting. So if you get a variety of different seeds from a good trusted source, I like Sprout House, but you can get a variety of different seeds. You do radishes, broccoli sprouts, you can do legumes, you can sprout lentils, you sprout all sorts of seeds, and you're getting an incredibly diverse presentation to your microbiome for them to live on, for them to consume, for them to eat, and for them to use as metabolic steps to get to the development of vitamins and minerals and the development of neurotransmitters for your body to function properly.
So you do that from home?
So yeah, we can do another podcast on sprouting and bring some in here. And
let's do that.
Let's do that. You want to do that next?
So there's like people online who, they measure all their food, on a scale, and they're eating their chicken and their rice.
Calories, you mean?
Yeah, or whatever. Getting their macros, whatever.
Yep.
And they seem to have great physiques, right? They seem to they look great. They're building muscle. So like, why can't you just eat chicken and rice and then maybe a veggie and then whatever else they eat online? I don't know. Just if I don't do the diversity thing and I think I'm eating healthy foods, but I'm sticking in that silo in a very narrow, same thing every day, what happens to a less diverse microbiome?
So again, with the vitamins, each plant and each food source has a different variety of minerals and of vitamins. So minerals, for instance, like alfalfa, its roots go super deep, and it takes a little while to let that alfalfa plant mature, but it'll also come up each year, the alfalfa plant will. And so because it's so deep, it pulls minerals that other plants wouldn't get for you. So when you consume alfalfa, you're getting a mineral variety that you wouldn't get with another plant. So let's say you are just eating chicken and rice. Well, it's very likely you're not getting a good source of vitamin C. In fact, it's very likely, depending on whether you're doing white rice or brown rice, but you may not even be getting an appropriate amount of B vitamins. So you can be missing out in a significant way on minerals and on vitamins by isolating your diet in a very narrow window. Now, sometimes, and we'll talk about this as well, but sometimes there is a need for a consistency in diet.
I mean, think about how complicated life is if you could just meal plan healthy food, even if it's just chicken, rice, broccoli, whatever, versus that quick trip to the gas station or fast food, right? Like, there are levels and different variations to this picture we're painting.
Yes. Well, and I don't want to make it seem as though it's so overly complicated that it can't be done, because in reality and in truth, like, take a moment, you're sitting there and you're wanting to go on a date with your spouse. What's the first question you ask? Or you want to go on a date with someone? Like, you're thinking to yourself,
where are we going to eat?
What do I want to eat?
Yeah.
Right? Oh, and you're like, well, do I want to eat Mexican? I have a certain profile of foods there. I could be exposed to some corn and some beans and some rice and some veggies, maybe some peppers, right? Which also have a really good antioxidant profile and everything. It's like, okay, but maybe I go to the steakhouse. Well, steakhouse, I'm going to get maybe some sort of veggie, hopefully, right? Depending on what I select and choose. But then oftentimes you're offered like potatoes or a large portion of steak or meat. So your body naturally it craves diversity, right? Your body naturally does not want to eat the same thing all the time. So this is actually a really good thing. It's inherent within our own understanding that we should be eating we should be eating a variety and not the same exact thing all the time. So it's actually an inherent part of our being. Okay? But we can get into these really narrow focused, this is what I've been told is good for me, so I'm going to stick with this, and it seems to work for me, so I'm going with it right now. And those are moments, I would say, usually when people have found themselves in states of, like, disease states. They're getting into areas of inflammation or a chronic disease or ailment of some sort. And that will be a benefit in a short term to somebody to say, okay, you're going to have to restrict your diet temporarily, and then we can begin to reintroduce dietary measures or increase the amount of vegetable variety or increase the amount of grains and different things that you're exposed to.
Yeah, I have a friend who's obese, and he started carnivore, and he's lost like 15 pounds, and he's feeling great. And I'm like, I'm first of all not an expert, just an armchair guy, quarterback, whatever, just watch a lot of stuff, talk to you. But I'm like, I can just tell. I'm like, this probably isn't the long-term thing for you, but I don't know for how short-term it'll be beneficial, but for now, it's great.
Yeah.
Like, he's feeling better.
It's working for him.
Yeah, it's working for him. I'm like, great.
Yeah, well, early on in our relationship, we got into this raw food kick, right? There was a big raw food movement happening, and I was like, okay, let's look into this. So my wife and I, we went to a few seminars and started making the meals.
The raw food thing was a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like 20 years ago or something. Yeah.
But it was all raw vegan.
Oh, yeah, it was big. And there were people doing handstands like, oh, I cured myself of my arthritis, and yada, yada. Yep. I broke my microwave and threw it out the door, which I think is probably a good idea, by the way. But anyway, what I really learned from that was that we should eat more fruits and vegetables in their raw state. But also, what I learned from that is that raw can also be kind of hard on your body. So it's important to some level to activate the enzymes, because within the raw food industry, when using nuts, oftentimes you would soak nuts first. And the reason you're soaking them is to begin to activate the enzymes and the biotic cultures and species within the nuts itself, so that your body wasn't having to generate all the metabolic capacity and the enzymes, because that can be exhausting for your body. And you can actually develop gas, and you can develop fermentation within the system as it moves through, if it's not moving through efficiently enough in your gut and your GI. And so the point is that as we looked at this raw food diet that was happening and occurring, we realized this is a good thing, that we should begin to implement some of these strategies into our lifestyle. But if you stay on this lifestyle for a long period of time, there are cold type diseases. So now I'm stepping into Chinese medicine territory. So territory is everything in nature has a temperature. And it does. Everything in nature has a temperature. And it has you can say, what is the burn rate or the temperature at which this substance burns? And if it burns at a really high rate, if it burns at a really high temperature, then that means it's a pretty cold substance. So if I consume it, my body as a combustion engine is going to have to provide a lot of enzymes and a lot of heat to try to combust that and break it down and actually get it to the place where it can be utilized by my organs. Otherwise, it's just going to, pass through me. Okay? So if it's at a lower temperature, then essentially that means it's a hotter or a warmer food. And that is going to be taken up generally more quickly, more easily by the body, and absorbed more readily. Now, of course, more highly processed foods are warmer. They have less of the structure of the plant, less of the structure of the substance itself of the food that would make your body have to catabolize it and break it down in order to get to the sugar and in order to get to the nutrient, in order to get to the fat, in order to get to the mineral and extract that from it, right? So it would require a whole lot less from your body enzyme-wise and probiotic-wise, which then what do your probiotics do? What do your biotic species in your gut do? They start to say, well, man, if we're eating mostly this processed foods, then we don't have to be very diverse because we just get easy access to pull in all these nutrients. And we've talked about the other physiological detriments to pulling in those nutrients super quickly, like diabetes, insulin resistance, and things like that as well that have come as a result of those processed foods. But that's one way in which processed foods can actually limit the diversity within your gut.
So give me what can I do?
What do you do?
Yeah.
So sprouting, number one, I think is a great thing to do. Get a diversity of seeds, put them up in your window in a bottle. All you have to do is soak them a little bit, soak them overnight, and then strain them. You run water through them once a day. It's not very hard to manage them. After about 3 days, maybe 4, you have really good amount, almost filling your entire mason jar with sprouts. And then what I do is I put that into a plastic bag, and then I'll put it in my fridge, and then I'll put it on my salads. I'll put it on sandwiches. I'll put it anywhere, whatever we're doing, and the kids know they'll do it too. And sometimes I'll just go to the fridge if I want a snack. If I feel like, I feel like I need to eat something or I need some nutrients, I'll grab a little handful of those and I'll consume them, especially the ones that have little radish seeds in them or little mustard seeds.
Boring.
Yeah, it's so exciting, Nick. It's so inviting. Yes. So, it's probably a little bit less boring than
No, it sounds
pudding.
exciting.
I'm just teasing.
Sounds exciting. But Brian Johnson's Nutty Pudding is crazy.
Yeah. Yes.
Remember I told you all the ingredients in there?
Yes, you did.
Sunflower,
just
lecithin,
kept going.
Ceylon cinnamon, macadamia nuts, cacao, cherries.
You got to make sure you can pull out all of those ingredients that you need every day, of course, right?
Of course you need them all. I don't even know what they all do, but so what about rotating meals? How do I just give me something I can use besides sprouting? Because I don't know if everyone's going to do that, but I like it. It's a good idea. That's just a really simple
way. So the idea is, again, I say, look at your hand. How many fingers do you have? That's how many foods you want to be consuming. Different foods. Yeah. You want to be trying to get yourself exposed to, one hand. If you can get 5 different foods, 5 different vegetables, right? Different things like that.
In a meal or a day?
A day.
Okay.
Yep. So, and then throughout the week, if you can get yourself a variety of at least 10 different foods, that's a minimum.
Actual foods.
Actual foods.
Foods where the food is the ingredient.
10 different foods. Yes. 10 different foods, right? That's what you want to be doing. If you can get to 20 to 30, that's going to be perfect. That's going to be super ideal for you. As well. So just look at your fingers first of all and say, okay, that's how many diversity of foods that I want to be consuming on a daily basis. So then after that as well, you can think about that same idea and then go, okay, now I'm going to do meal planning. Now I'm meal planning. What foods do I want to be including? Okay. I want to include some spinach. I want to include, people love to do kale.
Is spinach good for you? I hear bad things.
Well, so there's a lot of different things with spinach, but yes, in general, spinach is a beneficial food to consume.
Okay.
If it's properly sourced and if you wash it well before you use it, yes. But iceberg lettuce, you can use all sorts of things for your greens too. I love to use avocado. I like to use avocado every day in some way. And so getting a little avocado somewhere, I probably don't consume it every day, but I just like it. And so I probably think that I consume it every day, right? But I consume avocado frequently.
So it's okay to have certain things every day as long as you're spinning the rotation of other stuff.
Yeah, you want to keep things going. So what I would do is I would say, give yourself, let's say breakfast. Let's come up with 5 diverse meals. Okay, what's something, let's say, is fruit for breakfast okay? And when should you have your breakfast?
I mean, if I'm going to do breakfast, it's going to be 12 hours after my last meal.
Okay, good.
And I'm going to do something before the fruit to try to level out the glucose spike, but that's just me.
There you go. Good.
So like some protein, like some nuts, some eggs.
So nuts
before the fruit.
So having some nuts, and I would soak them the night before.
So, soak nuts?
Soak the nuts.
All nuts?
Put them in water. Yep. I would put them in water the night before and then drain them. And then you're activating the enzymes. So you're not consuming so much from your own body to be able to do that. And it's already kind of pre-broken down for you. Okay. So you're going to have less tummy disruption that way. And so soak the nuts, and then you can have berries, nuts and berries. That's a great breakfast.
What about some yogurt?
Yogurt's good. Now the thing with yogurt is you have to look at the ingredients. Remember, my number one rule is read the label. So a lot of people think, okay, this is a great yogurt, or Activia is a great yogurt, or Greek yogurt. And so it's like, okay, fine. Look at the ingredient. And if you have 5, 6, 7 ingredients, it's like all they really need in yogurt is milk and biotic species. That's all they need. That's all. Like yogurt is literally bacteria exposed to milk.
So you want very few ingredients on your yogurt.
Yeah, extremely few. And if it's like, okay, added sugar, or we put some extra berries or different things, right? And oftentimes they'll put emulsifiers or thickening agents. And it's like, you don't need any of those. Plus, those extra ingredients have actually been shown to decrease the diversity of gut microflora. So they're hard on some of the microflora that we would otherwise be supporting with a biotic culture known as yogurt.
So we want to add foods to our diet, but we want to make sure those foods don't have added ingredients.
Correct.
Keep your food simple, but eat a lot of them.
Yes.
In diversity and rotation.
And so thinking about it, it's like if I get a food from farm to table, typically, is there an added ingredient? It doesn't come with an ingredient
Sometimes
label.
at the farmer's market, they're not organic, but they're local. And then I could go to like the big box store and get like organic spinach from like, the spinach factory.
And then you have it in a package or something.
It's already pre-washed. I don't know which one's better.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of local, right? And so I like to support local. I think there's a variety of different things going into that. I think if you can have food in your local environment, again, it's got the biotic species of your local environment, and that's going to help you in general to thrive within your environment. As far as getting spinach from Chile or California that shows up on your store shelf in Utah.
As organic, pre-washed.
Exactly, as organic and pre-washed. It's simple. It's in a bag and a package. You can just rip it open and use it. That's a convenience factor. Again, if you look at ingredients, if you check the ingredients and it says spinach, you're good to go.
Okay. Where do we leave off?
I don't know exactly.
We were talking about
menu.
You gave us
so
one option on the menu.
We want to come up with like 5 different ingredients, right? Or 5 different ideas. But that's what I would do at home, is sit down and say, okay, I want to do different types of meals. We have a whole list at our home of dinners, breakfasts, different meals, and we've compiled this list. And so anytime that we go, what are we going to have for dinner? We're like, let's go to the list, right? Let's go to the list so that we can have variety. Oftentimes we'll fall into the very same type of things that we think are simple and easy. And sometimes they're not as simple and easy as we think. They're just familiar. And so because they're so familiar, we do them repeatedly.
Yeah.
So give yourself a list and include, I would say, broccoli is really good. Cauliflower is really good. Carrots are great. Olives, oh my gosh, for fats, olives, like actually consuming a good quality olives, or even using olive oil is so beneficial for your microbiome as well. Good quality fats, and it's really good for your hair, your skin, your nails, your brain, your nervous system.
Good olive oil is?
Olive oil, quality olive oil. And like I said, I love eating olives as well. It's very, very beneficial. So if you can figure out olives in a meal, a nice veggie type of breakfast you could have, and you could even throw a little bit of meat if you wanted to in there. You could get some healthy or organic sausage or farm-raised sausage, and have that with a very small amount, and then get some veggies like broccoli, steamed broccoli, and then you can throw in your olives as well. And that's actually a really tasty breakfast.
Sounds good. Almost as good as a McDonald's breakfast sandwich.
Better, way better.
Way better.
Way better. But not whey as in whey protein.
You're not a fan of whey protein?
Whey protein.
What are we talking about? We got to stay on focus.
Go ahead.
No, I mean, there is a benefit to getting this right in terms of your skin health, isn't there?
Absolutely. So when you are consuming foods, when you're consuming foods in a variety, right, that support a diverse microbiome, what that does is it supports your immune function. And if you have skin issues, it's a sign that your immune function is disrupted. Okay, so in fact, with skin issues, we'll use yogurt. Actually, biotic culture with milk is a really good application for skin issues, and it helps resolve them frequently by just applying yogurt topically to the skin, like if you've got eczema or rash or something like that. But again, it's got to be a good quality yogurt. If you've got all these other additives and ingredients and extra sugar and everything in there, it might actually just feed the rash as opposed to healing it.
Yeah, I probably have my own stuff going on, but I notice that if I get sick, I'll break out. Mm-hmm. And sometimes the breakout comes before I get sick. I'm like, what's that pimple on my head? And then it's like, and then and it's like,
and then there's a disruption.
So it's so interesting. Yeah, had a lot of acne as a kid, so we have more to work on probably with our own. Get my blood levels tested, and we'll continue to work. But I've come a long way, but I've just noticed that too. Is like the skin tells a story of something else going on.
Absolutely, and the skin is related to two things. The skin is related to the lungs. It's also related to the large intestine. In Chinese medicine, these are direct correlations. Now, they have something in Chinese medicine called the Wei Qi. And Wei Qi is essentially your immunity, your topical immunity, right? Their skin immunity. But that skin immunity comes from a diverse microbiome of the skin itself. So you have these different cultures, your eyes, in the nasal cavity, in the lips, the gums, in the ear, the hair follicles, the skin in general. It's an organ of itself, the integumentary system. So the skin has its own biotic culture, and it needs to be in balance. And when the balance of the skin is disrupted, then you're going to have things like rashes. Or if the balance of the large intestine or the lungs becomes disruptive, you can also have it show in the skin, because the lung, as you run, you exercise, you get your heart rate up, you expand the lungs, what happens? Your pores open. It's almost like a function of the lungs. You sweat and you release some of those toxins, right? But that's a function of the lung releasing through the skin. Okay, and so if there's a dysfunction or an issue with the lung or the large intestine, it's going to release and potentially show in the skin.
Longevity is also maybe the last thing we touch on here. That if you want to live for a while, keeping your microbiome diverse is a good idea.
Yes, absolutely. So longevity is perhaps something that everyone is these days chasing. Everyone wants to have the appropriate amount of lifespan. And
health span is the one I've heard Peter Attila talk about. He has this big longevity thing.
Well, health span is a more ideal way of saying it, and it relates more to what I'm about to say, is people want increased lifespan, but what they really want is increased quality of lifespan, or they want increased health span, right? Yep. And so nobody wants to have an increased lifespan that is dealing with some of these things that we've talked about, these inflammatory disorders, diabetes, inflammatory bowel diseases, autoimmune related disorders, joint diseases. Nobody wants to have an increased lifespan with that as their life, right? What they want is an increased health. They want to achieve health and be able to live vibrantly.
Yep.
And so this ultimately, when you have a balanced microbiome, when you're producing vitamins and minerals at the adequate amount, when you're producing neurotransmitters and supporting a natural mental state, right? When you're supporting a healthy digestive tract, all of these functions that your body regularly performs in a physiological sense, and it intercommunicates and it sends signals back and forth, and all of these signals are happening in a very harmonious way, that is going to support health moving forward. And we do that through diversity, through exposing ourselves to the most diverse, not to the least diverse, not to diving in and saying, okay, these are the only things that I should be eating, period. That's more of a state of clearing someone from disease, bringing them out of disease. So saying, okay, I'm going to give you these specific supplements for this period of time, or these specific foods, this specific diet, and you do it for a period of time, and it will work. Just like in the raw food diet, we had these people who had inflammatory diseases, and what they do, inflammatory diseases, what does that come from? Well, it comes from a sad American diet, right? The standard American diet, which is inflammatory, highly processed foods, which are not foods from farm to table. So they're eating highly inflammatory foods. They have an inflammatory diet. And so therefore they develop inflammatory diseases, right? So now they have inflammatory diseases. What do? They say, oh my gosh, I'm going to take on this totally anti-inflammatory, very cold diet known as raw food.
Right.
So they start consuming raw food diet, and they get really deep into it. And what happens to their inflammation? It goes down, starts going down. And then they get to this point.
Let's be honest, they probably lose weight.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they look
weight
better.
Is inflammatory as well.
And that probably feels good.
Absolutely. And so then they start, if they continue with this cold diet though, what happens is they get through that point where it's like, oh, there's the sweet spot. And to be fair, I don't think any of us really know where that sweet spot, like that sweet perfect spot is. But they'll go through it. And eventually they become more cold and cold and cold and cold. And if they stick with it, they keep going. Now they're developing cold type diets. So there are hot type arthritis.
Type diseases?
Sorry,
or is that
cold type diseases. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, they're going to develop cold type diseases because of the persistence in cold type diet with their food. And without warming that up, without providing appropriate nutrition, without allowing the body to have the opportunity to actually properly break down the foods that it needs to, it's not going to get the nutrients. It's not going to have the metabolic capacity. It's not going to be able to deliver to the mitochondria the energy that it needs to produce additional energy for all the cells of the body. And eventually someone becomes fatigued and overwhelmed, and maybe even cold type arthritic issues as well. So it's a balance. It is a balance, but it's about diversity. It's diversity of foods that we consume. And it is like you said, okay, yeah, there's a lot of things to consider, but the idea is not to look at it like food is so complicated, so therefore I'm going to minimize all my choices. The idea is to look at it and say, how can I expand the options that I have in front of me and still enjoy my daily routines that I like to perform and do. One other thing that I really like to do is I have herbals that I make.
Okay.
Which usually I have, somewhere between 3 and 10 different plants in my herbals that I make. I always like to enjoy an herbal tea, and I don't mean just one plant, like tea. Having a tea, the tea plant, that's just one plant. But I'm consuming 3 to 10 different species of plants in an herbal tea when I make them. So those herbal teas that we make have various different plants in them.
Oh, right. You've prescribed one of those to me once. It's the Nourished Blood. Yeah. That's pretty tasty.
Yeah, and it's actually nice. Nourished Blood is a really flavorful one. It helps the spleen. It helps with blood product, and it does help actually with digestion as well.
Yeah. So if you're interested in learning more, maybe getting some coaching along the way, getting your blood tested and getting some real world feedback on that, how can they help you? How can they get in touch with you so you can help be their coach along the journey? Well,
so if you want us to coach you, you can call our office here at Community Health and Wellness. Our phone number is 435-657-3696. You can reach out to our team. You can actually even text that number to our team.
And the link to your website's in the description of all the videos.
And our website is chwheber.com. And this has been one of our longer podcasts. So if you've stayed on till now, hopefully you've enjoyed this.
Please subscribe. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Every time I see a little subscribe, it makes a huge difference. I have other YouTube channels where I literally have tens of thousands of subscribers. every time we get one subscriber on this podcast, it like warms my heart because this is just passion for me. You know, I love this stuff.
Warm Nick's heart.
I love this stuff.
We want you to warm Nick's heart.
This is what I proposed to you. Let's do a podcast talking about health stuff, and I know it's your life. And so, hey, we appreciate it.
This is what I love. This is what I enjoy. I hope that you enjoy it too, and hopefully we can give you some information that will lead to you being well now.
Be well now, everybody.
Namaste.
Namaste.